The President, please be seated. Court officer is now instructed to call the witness and the jury counsel. The President, good morning, Mr. Witness. What's your name, please? Please wait until you see the red light activated on the console before you proceed to respond. You may proceed. Response. I am Panwan, Mr. President and Your Honors. The President, apart from being known as Panwan, do you use other names? Response. I also am called Kampan, my original name at birth. Question. What name do you use actually these days? Response. I am known nowadays as Panwan. Question. How old are you? Response. I am 53 years old. Question. Where do you live? Response. I live in Malay. Question. What do you do for the living? Response. I'm a farmer. Question. What's your father's name? Response. He is Lang. Question. What is his surname, please? Response. I'm afraid I don't remember. Question. What is your mother's name? Response. She is Kamgon. Question. What is your wife's name? Response. She is Hun Chawi. Question. How many children do you have? Response. I have 3 children. The President. Mr. Witness, so officially you are known as Panwan. You agree that we now call you Panwan? Response. Yes, I can be called Panwan, Mr. President. The President. According to the report by the greffier of the trial chamber, you are not related biologically to any of the parties to the proceedings, including the civil parties and the accused persons. Is that correct? Response. Yes, it is. The President. According to the same report, you took the oath already. Is it true? Response. Yes, it is. The President. Mr. Panwan, as the witness before this chamber, you can reject to respond to any questions that are self-incriminating. You therefore enjoy the right against self-incrimination of witnesses. In other words, as the witness, you shall respond to questions posed to you by the bench or parties to the proceeding, and indeed you can refuse to respond to any questions that are, or the responses that are incriminating. And as the witness, you shall only tell the truth, nothing but the truth that are relevant to your experiences, what you saw and what you witnessed. Do you understand this? Response: yes, I do. The President: Mr. Panwan, do you read and write Khmer? Response: yes, I do read and write some Khmer. The President: I'm talking about reading and writing in Khmer. Is it what your response was? Respond: yes, it is, Mr. President. I can read and write Khmer language. The President: Mr. Panwan, we thank you. My next question to you is, have you ever given any interviews to the investigators from the Tribunal? Response: yes, I have. Question: how many times did you give such interviews, and where and when? Response: I gave interviews to these people on 3 occasions in Malay. Question: do you remember the exact date and time for these 3 interviews? The President: if you remember the date, tells the chamber. So if not, just say you don't remember. Response: I don't remember the date, Mr. President. The President: thank you. Before you appear before this chamber, had you have any opportunity to read the records of your interviews, or have the record of interviews read out to you to reflect or refresh your memory of the events? Response: no, I haven't read any of the record of the interviews. The President: has anyone read out these to you? Response: indeed, my jury counsel did that to me. The President: according to your best recollection of the event, does the records read out to you by your counsel, jury counsel, reflect the actual events or accounts you provided during the 3 occasions in the interviews? Response: yes, the accounts are consistent to what I gave to during the interviews. The President: thank you. During these testimonies of this witness, the prosecutors will be given the opportunity to put questions to the witness first before the lead co-lawyers for the civil parties. Please be reminded that both civil parties, counsels, and the co-prosecutors will have 1 full day to put questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good morning to the panel of judges and all of the parties. Good morning to the witness. My name is Vincent de Wilde. I represent the co-prosecutors. I'm going to ask you some questions today up to the end of the day, and I may even go over just a little bit into tomorrow morning. After that, the civil party lawyers will be asking you some questions for about 1 hour. During the day, please be so good as to answer as accurately as possible to the questions you're asked. If you don't understand, please let us know. I'm going to work forward chronologically and start by going back to events that you lived through or that you were told about from before 1970 and then going up to the end of the Khmer Rouge regime. Let me begin then with a few questions about the period that precedes 1970. Can you tell us what province you lived in the years before 1970?
Response. Before 1970, I lived in Mondulkiri province.
Où avez-vous...
And where did you learn to read and write? In a village, in the jungle, or somewhere else?
Response. I learned in the jungle.
Pourquoi étiez-vous...
And why precisely were you in the jungle, and who were you with at that point in time?
Response. I was with my parents.
Et pouvez-vous nous...
Could you tell us why your parents were in the jungle in the years before 1970? What exactly were they doing there?
Response. They ran into the jungle.
Merci, je vais vous...
Thank you. Could you help us with a few more details on the questions I'm asking you? What I was trying to know was, why did they run away into the jungle?
Response. At that time, I was too young to know what happened. The only thing I know was that they ran away into the jungle.
Je voudrais...
Mr. President, I'd like to read an extract from an answer that was given by the witness to the co-investigating judges. It's E3/58, and on page 2 in both of the languages. So, with your leave, I would also like to refer to the 3 records of the interview, and I would also like to put page 2 in Khmer of document E3/58 on the screens, if I have your permission, sir.
The President, you may proceed, and court officer is now instructed to also bring a hard copy from the co-prosecutor for the witness examination.
Alors, il s'agit d'un extrait de votre...
So this is the record of witness interview from the 21st of November 2008, and on the second page it said, I learnt to read and write in the forest in the vicinity of Otang Olia in Ratanakiri province near the Vietnamese border. At the time I was young and had to follow my parents to live in the forest. The leaders who were in the forest included Ta Ya Tavang alias V Ta Yang Si, who died after the Vietnamese came in 1979, and Ta Leng, my father. End of quote. Does that help to remind you about the answer you gave us? And can you tell us if Ta Leng, your father, and Tayang alias V Tayang Si were all part of a political movement in those days?
Response: I still remember this. These people were the cadres in the resistance movement, including my father.
Merci.
Thank you. What was your father's role in that resistance movement before 1970?
Response: at that time I didn't know. I was too young.
Est-ce que votre...
After, did your father talk to you about this? Did he tell you what he was doing in the movement at the early 1970s?
Response: yes, later on I learned that he was the secretary of the sector, and I already stated that in the record.
Merci.
Thank you. But I'm still, in fact, talking about before 1970, when you were a child in the jungle in Ratanakiri. Did you meet Pol Pot, Ieng Sare, Khieu Samphan, or other movement leaders in Ratanakiri province before 1970?
Response: no, I didn't.
Merci.
Thank you. In that case, let's go on to mid-1970 to the end of 1973 and the start of 1974, and you told the investigating judges that you had lived and worked in B20. Can you tell us where B20 was between 1970 and 1973?
Response: I don't remember this very well, and I already stated earlier on about the location of this place. I know that it was somewhere near kilo number 10.
Merci.
Thank you. The aim of our questioning here is for you to say what you know about the events of the time, even if you've already told the investigating judges. So you told us that this was near kilometre marker number 10, but where are we talking about? In which province was B20 situated?
Response: I'm not sure on this.
Merci.
Thank you. In that case, perhaps I might read an extract from E3/58 to refresh your memory, because It comes under the first question you were asked at that session. It's in page 2 in the Khmer, French and English versions. In the English it's 2 and 3. And what you said was, Office B20 next to kilometre 10, Bangket. It might be in Stung Trăng district of Kampong Cham province. Does that help you to recall the place where B20 was? Was it in fact in Stung Treng district, or at least maybe in that district?
Response: Yes, it is perhaps in their district.
Vous avez dit avoir vécu à Bévin.
So you lived in B20, you said. Did you work there? Did you study there? If so, can you please give us some details?
Response: I lived there and worked at the same time.
Merci. Et
Thank you. What was your work?
Response: I was a messenger.
merci.
Thank you. Before we go on to what you might have studied, let's just talk about the work you did as a messenger. Who did you carry messages for?
Response: I served uncles at the office.
Merci.
Thank you. And when you refer to these uncles, could you give us the names of the so-called uncles who were working in Office B20?
Response: These uncles include Uncle Nuon, Uncle Hunam, Uncle Huyun, and Uncle Pol Pot.
Est-ce qu'il y avait
Were there other uncles apart from Nun, Pol Pot, Hunim and Huyun? Can you remember now?
The President, witness, please hold on. Counsel for Mr. Kilsampon, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Perhaps you could ask the witness to avoid rereading his statement during the intervals between the questions being put to him. He's refreshing his memory by doing the reading. It's what he's doing at this very second, in fact, and I'm not sure that this is advisable, Mr. President.
The President, Mr. Witness, you are now asked not to necessarily read the record of your interviews when questions are being put to you. You can read the record only when any certain portions of such a record or report are referred to, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. I fully agree. My question to you was to know if, in addition to Pol Pot, Nun, Huyim and Huyun, there were other leaders living or working in B20 and who you actually saw there.
Response: No, I didn't see any other uncles.
Merci.
Thank you. With the leave of the President, I will read another extract, this time from E3/57, which dates back to the 10th of March 2009, and this is the very first question that was put on pages 2 and 3 in Khmer, ERN 00287701, 0028770122, in French on page 2 and in English on page 3. And as usual, Mr. President, I'm going to ask your permission to put this up on the screen.
The President, you may proceed.
Je ne sais pas si monsieur le témoin.
I don't know if the witness has got E357 before him, but it'll be on the screen. And what he said was that in B20 there was Nunchia, Pol Pot, and a number of intellectuals, including Khieu Samphan, Hu Nim, and Hu Yun. Ta Mok and Son Sen came to this office occasionally. Briefly speaking, all the leaders of the sectors and zones came to meet here. End of quote. Do you remember, apart from Pol Pot, Hu Nim and Hu Yun, telling the investigating judge that you had also seen Ta Mok and Son Sen at that place?
Response: Yes, I do. I saw them there because that place was a common office where people would come to meeting. However, these people did not stay on a regular basis at this place.
Merci. Donc vous avez dit.
So, you said that you were a messenger, that you carried messengers for all of those senior people. Who did you carry these messages to?
Response: I carried these messages from one uncle to another. For example, from Uncle Nguyen to Uncle Pol Pot, from one house to another.
Est-ce que lorsque.
When you were working as a messenger, were all the uncles in the same place, or were some of them working a little bit further away than B20?
Response: They were in the same place. The President: Witness, could you hold on? Counsel Canovas, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe the way the question was phrased is rather confusing. Were all the uncles? Who does he mean by all? All that he just referred to after having his memory refreshed? All as in the universe of all, whatever that may be? I just think that it's not creating a clear record. It's confusing, and it may even be leading the witness. Thank you.
Je vais reformuler la question.
I shall rephrase my question, therefore, Mr. President. Witness, you confirm what you said before the co-investigating judges, that Mok and Sun Sen were there. I'm referring to the other zones. Nunchia, Pol Pot, Khieu Samphan, Hu Nim, and Hu Yun. Were those 5 uncles working and living in the same area? Were they working and living in B20, or on occasion did they work or live somewhere else?
They stayed there all together, but others came once in a while.
Est-ce qu'à l'époque, vous saviez
At the time, did you know what roles these various leaders played?
That I did not know.
dans l'extrait que j'ai lu tout à l'heure?
In the passage that I identified earlier, you stated that the zonal leaders had met in the center. Were you aware of any meetings amongst higher-ranking officials and the senior leaders at B20?
I only learned about that later on.
Merci. En même temps,
Thank you. Now, at the time, you were also working as a messenger. Did you learn anything at B20?
At the time, I was made to study the decoding of telegrams.
qui était le responsable
And who oversaw your learning and training in the decoding of telegrams?
President, I know the National Counsel for Mr. Kilsampon is on his feet. You may proceed. Counsel Kung Sam-un. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to object against the question because the witness just now talked about the telegram decoding, but the prosecutor was asking about the telegram or the translation of message. And you in Khmer it's different, the telegrams and the typewritten documents is different.
J'ai posé la question, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, my question was based on the translation that I was working on, which refers to the decoding of telegrams. And I know that in the first written record of witness interview, there does seem to be that confusion because there's reference to quote-unquote translation of telegrams, whereas in the second PV, there's reference to the decoding of telegrams. I know that there is a slight shift in the Khmer version. However, in order to clarify exactly what the witness said, I wish to know who taught him or who administered his training. And in response to the question that was put to him during the interview, perhaps he can confirm that very question.
This is called telegram at the time.
Merci pour cette précision. Alors, ma question.
Thank you for that clarification. However, my question was, who taught you to decode telegrams while you were at B20? Who was the name of the person who taught you decoding of telegrams?
At that time, a woman by the name of Sim was the trainer.
Est-ce qu'il y avait également quelqu'un qui s'appelait...
Was there also a person called Yus who was working within the telegram section at B20?
I do not recall, and I do not recall his name.
Merci. Peut-être que...
Thank you. Perhaps this is on account of my mispronunciation of the name, but in your PV, classified under E3/57 on the third page of the Khmer version, on the third page of the French version, and also on the third page of the English version, you stated the instructor of the children was called Sim, a woman who has since deceased. My telegram teacher was called Yos, spelt in English, or transliterated in English, Y-O-S. Does this refresh your memory, Mr. Witness, with respect to the person who taught you to decipher telegrams?
Yes, there was a man by the name of Jules. He is deceased.
Est-ce que vous avez jamais rencontré...
At B20, did you ever meet a person called Nong Sopong, alias Pang, spelled P-H-A-N-G? Did you meet a person called Dim, spelled D-I-M, or a person called Pang, P-A-N-G? Did you ever meet those people at B20?
No, I didn't.
Lorsque vous appreniez à décoder les...
And when you were learning to decode telegrams, were you taught to draft or encrypt telegrams? Did you learn the codes that were being used and applied by the Khmer Rouge?
Yes, I was trained how to encode telegrams.
Et tout en étant formé, est-ce que...
And in practice, did you encode and decode telegrams that were sent to and from the various uncles from B20 to other areas?
No, I was trained, but I did not practice it anyway. I never decoded it.
Merci.
Thank you. I wish now to move to the period after your departure from B20. Before the co-investigating judges, you stated that you accompanied your father, Ta Leng, to Obung Krom. You went to Sector 105. Can you please tell this chamber when exactly you left B20 to go to Obung Krom? And please forgive me for my pronunciation.
I do not recall the exact date.
Pour vous rafraîchir la mémoire,
Even if you do not recall the precise date, do you have an idea of the approximate period or time or year or season during which you left B20?
I do not recall the year but it could have been either in 1972 or 1973.
Merci. Quand vous avez accompagné votre...
Thank you. When you accompanied your father, what exactly did you do for him? Did you work for him?
I was assisting him in decoding telegrams.
Lorsque vous étiez...
And when you were at Ubon, can you please tell the chamber exactly where Ubon was located? Is it in the province of Mondulkiri?
Yes, it was located in Mondulkiri province.
Est-ce que, lorsque vous étiez sur place,
And while you were there, did leaders such as Pol Pot, Nunchia, Khieu Samphan, and Ieng Sari visit that area?
No, they didn't.
combien de temps êtes-vous resté
How long did you stay at Ubon before leaving for Phnom Kharol in Sector 105?
I cannot catch your question.
Donc je me bats un peu avec les noms.
I'm sorry, I seem to be struggling with the pronunciation of names. You stated that when you accompanied your father, you arrived at a place called Ubon Krom, and then you went to go live at Phnom Khol. Therefore, perhaps you can tell us when you arrived at Phnom Kharol.
I left for Phnom Khrao when we were about to liberate Phnom Penh.
Est-ce que le bureau de Phnom Khrol
Did the office at Phnom Khol have a code name?
There was an office there by the code name K17.
Merci. Je vais revenir sur...
Thank you. I wish now to focus on your duties and the administrative structure at Sector 105. You referred to the liberation of Phnom Penh. You stated that you were in Sector 105 just prior to the liberation. Were there people who were being evacuated from Phnom Penh or other cities and who were sent to Mondulkiri, who were sent to Sector 105 after April 17th, 1975? Did you witness the arrival of evacuees while you were there?
No, I did not.
Merci.
Thank you. Earlier, we talked about communications within Sector 105 or between Sector 105 and the center. However, to fully grasp exactly how communications were sent, I wish to ask a few questions with respect to the organization and structure of Sector 105. Now, prior to April 1975, what were your father's duties at Sector 105?
My father was the secretary of the sector.
Tout à l'heure, vous avez dit que vous ne vous souvenez.
Earlier, you stated that you did not recall the various revolutionary names of your father. Now, did he have several revolutionary names, and were they altered frequently?
Lang and Hom were used as his alias.
Est-ce qu'il y avait d'autres pseudonymes qu'il utilisait?
Did he use any other aliases in signing off on his telegrams, based on your recollection?
No, he did not use any other alias in the telegrams.
En tant que secrétaire du secteur,
And in his capacity as secretary of Sector 105, do you know to whom your father reported from April 1975 onwards?
My father had to report to Office 870.
merci.
Thank you. How did you know that he reported to Office 870?
That was accordance with the telegrams. President, the counsel for Mr. Kyu Sampon, you may proceed. Counsel Kung Samon. Thank you, Mr. President. I have a brief observation to make in relation to the additional question by the prosecutor. The witness testified that his father went to Office 870 and sent to 870, and then the prosecution added that the telegram was sent to Office 870. So I would like to ask the prosecutor to please stick to the answer provided by the witness without adding any additional words.
Encore une fois, il doit s'agir d'une question d'interprétation.
I was simply asking to whom he reported and how the witness knew or came upon the knowledge that he reported to Office 870. It's only based on the telegrams that he is familiar with. Did you know under whose authority or auspices he was positioned, or to which Khmer Rouge he reported?
I'm afraid I do not understand your question.
Oui, je voulais savoir.
Yes, what I seek to know is, within the hierarchy of Sector 105, where exactly was he ranked? And did he report to a zone, or did he report to another body, such as the office or the center?
870 belongs to the center.
Est-ce que la région 105, d'après ce
Based on what I gather from your response, sir, is it fair to assume that Sector 105 was an autonomous sector?
And if my understanding was correct, it was an autonomous sector.
Rapidement, combien de districts
Very quickly, how many districts comprise Sector 105? If you recall the number of districts, can you also please provide the names of those districts?
I do not recall all the names of the districts under Sector 105.
Est-ce que vous vous souvenez
Even if you do not remember all of the names, do you recall some of the names of the districts or areas that reported to Sector 105?
Koh Nhek District, Khao Sema, Orang, Pachanda, and Khao Sema districts.
Merci.
Thank you. Were there a good number of cooperatives within Sector 105?
Well, there were cooperatives attached to each district.
Est-ce que ces coopératives avaient été créées avant la...
And were the cooperatives set up and established prior to the arrival of your father or after his arrival?
I'm afraid I don't understand the question.
Oui, vous avez dit...
Yes, you stated that there were cooperatives within each district. Were the cooperatives up and running prior to the arrival of your father at Phnom Kol, that is before 1975, or after he arrived?
Before 1975.
Est-ce que vous savez à peu près à...
Do you know approximately at what date the cooperatives were established?
Since I left B20, it was in late 1973 or early 1974.
Tout à l'heure, vous aviez dit...
Just now you said 1972 to 1973. Are you therefore clarifying that it was only in 1973 or 1974 that you left B20?
I do not recollect well.
Est-ce que vous savez si des directives...
Do you know whether directives were issued by the movement or the leaders of the movement who were based at B20? Directives according to which cooperatives would be set up and established in Sector 105 prior to 1975.
I was very young at that time. I did not understand that much. But what I knew was that before 1975, people act collectively.
Alors, lorsque vous avez...
During the time that you were working at Sector 105, you were there with your father in Phnom Kol. Did the sector dispose of its own military troops?
There was the sector military attached to the sector.
Donc, si je comprends bien, cette armée
Therefore, if I understand correctly, the troops reported directly to your father, Mr. Ta Leng.
That is correct.
et qui était responsable
And who was responsible for security? Who was above your father? Was there a cadre at Sector 105 who led those troops?
Sophia was.
Merci. À part l'armée du secteur,
Thank you. And aside from the sector's army troops, was there also a division of the Revolutionary Army of Cambodia stationed at Sector 105?
I'm afraid I do not understand the question. Are you talking about the period prior to 1975 or post 1975?
non, je parle
No, I'm referring to the period between 1975 and at the end of 1977. And my question is whether there was a division of the RAK that was stationed within Sector 105.
There was after 1975. Their presence in mid 1975. The soldiers under the command of the commander of Division 920.
et qui était le dirigeant de cette
Who was the leader of Division 920 when it was established in Mondulkiri?
Chen was.
Merci. Est-ce que
Was Chun later replaced by another leader as the person responsible for the division? And if so, what is the name of that person?
Later he replaced by someone else, but I did not know.
The President, since it is now appropriate time for land adjournment, the Chamber will adjourn until 1:30 p.m. Court officer is now instructed to assist the witness and his jury counsel during the adjournment and have him return to the courtroom by 1:30 p.m. Counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chia, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. Your Honors, I'm informed that our client awoke this morning with an elevated blood pressure at around 5 a.m. He was, in fact, seen by the doctor. He was checked again at a later stage this morning. It seems that his blood pressure has returned to a relatively stable state. However, he is still suffering from a backache, a headache, and a lack of concentration. He would like to follow the proceedings this afternoon from the holding cell. He's quite interested in this witness. He's going to do his best to follow the proceedings this afternoon from the holding cell. However, we will keep an eye on him, and we will inform you at any stage if he is in fact unable to do that. That is, to follow the proceedings. So our application is that he be permitted to retire to the holding cell for the afternoon. Thank you.
President, the Chamber notes the request made by counsel for Mr. Nuon Chea, in which Mr. Nuon Chea has asked that he be allowed to observe the proceedings from his holding cell due to his health concerns. He indicated that he could not remain seated in this courtroom. The request is well grounded, and that Mr. Nuon Chea is now allowed to observe the proceeding from his holding cell downstairs through video audio means. Mr. Nuon Chea has already made it clear that he has waived his right to be present in the courtroom. Counsel for Mr. Nuon Chea is now instructed to produce the waiver given samprint or signed by Mr. Nuon Chea in due course. AV Booth officers are now instructed to ensure that the holding cell where Mr. Nuon Chea will retire to will be well connected to the audio-visual link so that he can observe the proceedings for the whole afternoon. And counsel for Mr. Nuon Chea is also informed that regarding the medical checkup on your client by the doctor, it is up to the doctor who is on duty at this court who has the discretion to examine his health when needs be, and it is not up to the observation by any counsel of Mr. Nuon Chea concerning the medical matter. It is up to the doctor decision. Security personnel are now instructed to bring Mr. Nuon Chea and Khieu Samphan to their respective holding cell and have Mr. Khieu Samphan return to the courtroom by 1:30. Counsel, you still on your feet. You may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to clarify for the record, I didn't indicate that we would be performing any medical examinations on our client. Obviously, we're not in a position to do that. What I said was we will keep an eye on him, and we will do that. We will monitor his progress this afternoon to ensure that he is in fact, that is actually effectively participating from the holding cell. That's all I meant by my comments earlier this morning. Obviously, we're not doctors ourselves. Thank you.
The President, we thank you very much that you fully understand this. The court is now adjourned.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រុមឈរ